right, good afternoon and welcome back everyone to the CRC in the Studio series. My name is Maxwell Kiesner, professor of instrumental music here at Summit River College, and we're really excited to bring you another edition of our weekly webinar series. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is something that we started last semester in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and our move to the online instruction format. We want to make sure that our students are getting the most out of their time with us. And we figured because we would normally be bringing guest artists to the students in class and within performances and things like this, that we may as well create an opportunity for our students to interact with our guest artists virtually. And so this has become a really successful program, and we're so excited to bring you artists from across the nation and across the world. And before we get started with our guest artists, I do want to thank everyone in the music department, everyone at CRC who's been supporting the program these past two semesters, and especially Gabriel Rivera, who's behind the man behind the curtain, helping us out with tech support, running all the videos, and all this stuff that you're seeing today is going to be streamed, of course, and it's going to be archived on our YouTube page. So you can go to YouTube Music at CRC and check us out there. Okay. So thank you to everyone out there. And I think we start with the music. I want to introduce to you somebody that I've known for a long time, since I was in high school and in college. Someone we got a chance to tour together. And now he's off doing amazing things in Nashville, Tennessee. He's a drummer, singer, composer, musical director, inventor, business owner, so many other things. Let's give a warm round of applause for Danny Young.
Hello.
Hey, Danny, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. We've got
Pumped
our
to be
coffee.
here.
We're so excited. Cheers, cheers. Oh, look at you. What is that thing called now?
This is a Bolio, so it's a double-walled insulated glass container that will keep your coffee about the same temperature for like an hour. That's how nerdy I am.
For those coffee enthusiasts out there, this is your guy. Okay, so if you're a drummer, pay attention. If you're a singer, pay attention. If you're an entrepreneur, pay attention. And if you love coffee, check out his Instagram, Danny
If you
Young.
have hair, ignore me.
And before we get into the interview proper, where can people check you out? What are your social handles and all that kind of stuff?
So my Instagram is Danny Young Drums, literally my name, which you can see down there, Danny Young Drums. And Facebook, just Danny Young. And then if you really want to check out my website in lack of current touring opportunities, you can go to dannyplaysdrums.com.
So I've just posted Danny's bio in the chat. For those of you with us live here, you can check that out and see what kinds of things he's been doing. But as you can tell already, he's been doing a lot. Of course, live performances is primarily his thing. And I think we're going to start off with one performance of yours. This is a video you sent to me just recently. And this is from Bailey Bryan. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Can you talk a little bit about this performance, maybe how you met this artist? This is someone who is a bit unfamiliar to me, but maybe others out there are familiar with.
So Bailey started out actually in the country world when she was like 14, and she had a song that she had written that went pretty viral. And so I had a couple friends that were playing for her, and the drummer is also a producer and mixer, and he started getting so busy he decided to go off the road, and he was just like, hey, if you want this gig, I think you'd be a great fit for it. And it worked out great, because if there was ever anything that I couldn't do, because at that time I was playing for 4 artists, he would be able to just step in, take a day out of the studio and go sub on the gig for me. So since then, she's officially switched over into the pop world and now has a lot of her management and stuff out in LA. And she just had one of her singles climb up the charts, and I think it was number 36 on the pop charts as of last week. And so to kind of monetize on that and whatever, they all of a sudden were like, hey, is everybody available in a day to play Colbert? So that's what this video is us frantically getting a band together.
I see. You
Yeah.
know, the session we actually have here loaded up, and maybe we can find the Colbert
Oh,
one.
this is a
This is
different
the
one.
live performance from the SBB sessions.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes.
We do have one of your other Colbert performances, if that's all right.
Oh, whichever you
From
want. Yeah.
Tyminski. So let's do the Play With Me live performance
Yep.
SBB session. Same song, same performance and everything.
Yep.
Right? All right.
And I swear you got a radar. It goes off when I start moving on. Could be a liar with a snake heart, but still an angel. I'm unstable when you turn me on. So I'ma have to go and set you back to do not disturb. Cause I can't relax, you ghost and then you have to have the last word. So tell me where you're thinking you can come around me with all this different, always switching energy. It's childish and tiring to say the least. That you act all innocent, like ooh, you wanna ride the wave with me. Ooh, you wanna spend the day with me. Ooh, but then don't text me till it's time to fall asleep. Boy, you don't see you play yourself when you play with. Ooh, you wanna ride the wave with me. Ooh, you wanna spend the day with me. Ooh, but then don't text me till it's time to fall asleep. Boy, you don't see you play yourself when you play with me. Pretty boy, where did you come from? Hit me like a sucker punch, feeling like a bitch slap. Ever seen a bitch snap? Yeah, were you about to? I'ma change my whole mood, just like I told you. Tell me where you're thinking you can come around me with all this different, always switching energy. It's childish and tiring to say the least. That's why I don't trust these men. Like, ooh, you wanna ride the wave with me. Ooh, you wanna spend the day with me. Ooh, but then don't text me till it's time to fall asleep. Boy, you don't see you play yourself when you play with. Ooh, you wanna ride the wave with me. Ooh, you wanna spend the day with me. Ooh, but then don't text me till it's time to fall asleep. Boy, you don't see you play yourself when you play with me. Yeah, yeah, you play yourself when you play with me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Play yourself. Tell me where you're thinking you can come around me with all this different, always switching energy. It's childish and tiring to say the least. That's why I don't trust these men. Like, ooh, you wanna ride the wave with me. Ooh, you wanna spend the day with me. Ooh, but then don't text me till it's time to fall asleep. Boy, you don't see you play yourself when you play with. Ooh, you wanna ride the wave with me. Ooh, you wanna spend the day with me. Ooh, but then don't text me till it's time to fall asleep. Boy, you don't see you play yourself when you play with me.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
actually was Colbert.
That was Colbert.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was that one. Yeah.
So this is his play from home session.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So
That's what that one was for.
Gotcha. So he's doing all these performances, not in the studio. They're live with the audience, of course. But you're sending in performances for these.
Yeah.
Shows.
Yeah.
And
Super
so
cool.
success then happens pretty quickly, right? So Bailey is taking off, and you're kind of on that.
Well,
ride.
and that song's a year old, which is even more funny. And I guess some TikTok influencers found it and, like, no joke, posted about it, and all of a sudden just blew up. And the second that happens, management's immediately like, let's go, you know? So it's like, you never know. Like,
assemble the
Comes out of
crew,
nowhere.
right? You got to
Yeah,
get
exactly.
together and
Well,
put
and I'm her music director, so I get a phone call. This is the funniest part about this. I get a phone call and she's like, "Hey, so we've got this opportunity to play on Colbert, and I'd love you to put together a band." And I was like, "Okay, cool." She's like, "I'll call you in a few hours." Like super casual. So I start texting a few people. I was like, "Hey, what's your schedule in the next couple weeks?" And then I get a phone call and she's like, "Okay, so we're booked for tomorrow." And I was like, "What?" Like, whoa. Maybe a little heads up next time. Like,
oh no. So you mentioned a word there that maybe some of our viewers and some of the students who might be watching this later don't quite understand. You said the word musical director. So when somebody says that, somebody might think of a conductor, right? Somebody who conducts the band or something. But
yeah.
what is a musical director in your world?
Well, it's essentially it's the same thing without the conducting, really. So I'm in charge of making sure that everybody has everything that they need to be prepared to play the music that we're going to do. I need to know everyone's parts well enough that in a rehearsal, I can go, "Oh, guitar player X, you played the wrong chord on the fourth bar of the bridge," and correct him. It's basically my job to get the band to be a cohesive unit and sound good as a group.
Gotcha.
And that also involves doing stage plots and all sorts of fun stuff. So the first time I took one of those jobs as an MD, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And all of a sudden I was having to learn all sorts of things I had never done before. And yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we've spoken about that on a personal level, and you also have this thing that you've done in the years past, kind of a behind the gig or beyond the gig series. You know, where there's these moments where you're starting to realize that your training as a musician wasn't really enough for that moment, and you just have to kind of learn on the job, right? Were
It's
there
like
other moments?
20% being able to play and about 80% everything else. Like, yeah. Yeah, stuff they never tell you when you're in college.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure we have some music majors on right now, and some people who are maybe aspiring music majors or just thinking about it. And you know, we say, okay, you got to learn to sight read, you got to learn to play your scales, and so on and so forth. But we never really talk about that other aspect, right? The interpersonal stuff, the communication aspect, right? You know, texting
Networking,
people back.
promotion, yeah.
100%. Has there ever been a moment where that either came back to bite you because it wasn't enough on your end, or you started to realize that because you were doing a good job of that, that's why you were getting gigs?
I think I was always the opposite. I I've always put myself out there, and I've always been a bit of a, like in your face type of person. Not to an extreme, but all of the gigs that I think I've ever gotten have been so far beyond what I should have been in. But that was my own doing. I mean, I would sit on BroadwayWorld.com when I lived in New York, and I would look at the dancer auditions coming up and be like, okay, if they're having dance auditions, they don't have a band yet. So they listed the music director and the music supervisor. I would hunt these people down. Like, this is before everybody was on Facebook too. So I would just be on Google, like trying to find as much information as I could. And I would directly call and email these people and be like, "Hey, I'm a drummer. I've done this and this and this. I would love to be on this gig." And like, I started getting booked.
Yeah.
And then I was like, now I need to learn how to play jazz. Not that so extreme, funny. but no, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 100%. Like, you know, something that always kind of resonates with me was this phrase, like, make your intentions known to those people who can do something about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to play, if you want to perform, if you want to compose, you got to tell somebody. You can't just keep that to yourself all the time, right. You know, in a very like literal and kind of figurative way. Like, you can't just like keep this, oh, I really want to be a composer, just sitting in your bedroom, you know, making your own beats or whatever. Go out and actually get your music out there and tell a friend, you know, call people who can help you with this, you know?
Well, and an interesting thing that I learned too. So I grew up as a singer. That wasn't something that I necessarily planned on incorporating into my career. I wanted to play drums. That was my goal. I moved to Nashville. I was like, I'm just never going to tell anybody I play piano or I sing.
Yeah.
Like a non-thing. I had gotten a few cool gigs, but never really excelled. Mm-hmm. And then I got one gig and I sang on it. as a joke, like just like during sound check, and they were like, oh, get him a mic. So they got me a mic. I sang on the gig. Well, the guitar player on that gig ended up calling me the next week for the biggest gig of my life, because he's like, we've been looking for a singing drummer.
Hey.
And every gig, I'm not kidding, every gig after that I've ever landed is because I'm a singing drummer.
Singing drummer, it's like the golden goose. It's it's currency out there. So to all of our drummers out there in the world, you need to sing.
It doesn't even have to be good, just sing.
Well, that's kind of how you got to start, right? You were a singer first. I remember you saying you were singing in a family band, like with your brothers and sisters, and was your parents, your dad?
My dad directed it and he wrote most of the music. But yeah, I mean, I grew up singing in a quartet, doing Christian shows and radio shows and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
In rural Wisconsin.
Good old farm country.
Danny and I are both from Wisconsin. We're both cheeseheads, and we have that. We have that to commiserate over, I suppose, from time to time. A shared history. But actually, let's show a video of you singing and playing. Why don't we? This is actually the next one in our playlist, and this playlist is posted in our chat as well. This is a song called "Everything Looks Beautiful." It's a live performance for the World Cafe radio program. I suppose virtual live performance program as well. But this is Lucie Silvas. So what's going on with Lucie, and how'd you hook up with her?
Yeah, so Lucie was actually a super, multi #1 artist in the UK, doing like straight ahead Christina Aguilera pop, which when you hear this song, you're going to be like, wait, what? And she moved to Nashville and decided to go in a completely different direction, went a lot more kind of Americana. And her and I met because she was opening on a festival that I was playing on down in Florida, Tortuga Fest, outdoor beach festival, super fun. And she came running up to me after I played my set, and she's like, hey, when we get back to Nashville, let's grab coffee. And I was like, okay. Everybody says that, no one calls you for coffee. Yeah. The second I got back, she called me for coffee. And like we met up, she was like, so I don't want you to answer anything yet, but I have to have you on this gig, but I want to make sure you like the music. So I'm going to send you a link after we leave. I want you to listen to it, be honest with me, tell me what you think, and we'll go from there. I went home to mow my yard, and I listened to the album top to bottom, bawled my eyes out on, no joke, half of the songs. So you've got this grown man, shirtless, sweating, mowing his lawn, crying. And I was like, this is everything I've ever looked for in a gig. And I've been with Lucie since then. So it's been a couple of years now. And she is one of my favorite people, most talented writers. Like, just love her.
I'm sorry, I can't take you serious right now. I'm still imagining you shirtless, crying, mowing your lawn. Like
it happened. It happened.
That's the first thing I want to see when I come to Nashville. Okay, so
I'll get a video next time I'm mowing.
We're going to take a listen to this. This is the live performance of that song with Lucie Silvas. Sorry, Everything Looks Beautiful. And for the musicians and those people kind of tuning into what you're playing, I want you to look at Danny's setup. And it's a little different than the setup that he had in the last video as well. So maybe somebody can spot the difference, and we can talk about the instrument you're playing on the first video specifically. Okay,
good segue.
Yeah.
Love has a way of playing in the darkness. Soft as a rain to feel like a blossom. Oh, yeah. No matter which way things go, turns out we're the strongest. Oh. We hold each other's hands, dancing slowly to the band. Everything's hazy but you. I guess that's why A kiss is a drink, and you found the fountain. Why don't we see the magic that's happening? Oh, if you never let me go, oh, we breathe a new fashion, babe. Well, there's a brightness in your eyes I've never seen until tonight. Everything's hazy but you. I guess that's why everything looks so beautiful when you're in love. Over time, we'll turn the desert to shades of gold when it's sweet enough. Light as a feather, shining like a treasure. Everything is better, it's true. I guess that's why everything looks so beautiful when you're in love. Oh, when you're in love, baby. Light as a feather, shining like a treasure. Everything is better, it's true. I guess that's why everything looks so beautiful when you're in love. Over time, we'll turn the desert to shades of gold when it's sweet enough. When you're in love, when you're in love. Oh, when you're in love. Oh, everything looks beautiful, beautiful. Oh, when you're in love.
That brings back some memories.
Wow. Yeah, I can see what you mean about pulling on the heartstrings, man. Jeez.
That's not even one of the sad ones.
Yeah, it's the happy one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, great playing. It just feels like, okay, so quick questions, just musically. Your sense of groove and time is like really deep. It's a profound kind of feel that you play with. Is that something that you've always had, or have you had to develop that sense of just like what we would call pocket in the rhythm section world?
The pocket stuff is a much more recent thing, and I don't care what anybody says, you can learn it. I know there's a lot of people that are like, if you can't play behind the beat, you'll never play behind. I completely disagree. And I will 100% talk to anybody that wants to learn it, because I came from, I mean, the longest period of my career so far has been playing Broadway in New York and doing that. And your goal from beat one of the show is to get to that last note. And the reason is unions and overages. And I'm not kidding. So you are supposed to be so far on top of the beat that you're practically in the next measure. When I came to Nashville, oh man, was that a rude awakening, because it's the exact opposite. It's take as long as you possibly can to get to that beat two snare as you possibly can. And it took me just sitting down, recording myself with a click track and going, holy cow, I'm like that.
Yeah.
How do I get to that?
So it's not so much about playing with perfect metronomic time as it is creating a feel or a texture, right? Like a
Yes.
perception of time that's comfortable and
Well,
that
and
people want to.
you being a horn player, you know how this goes too, especially in the swing world. Like the drummer and the bass player are pretty leveled up on the downbeats. The horn section plays as a group but behind,
Hmm,
and it sounds right.
hmm,
But the reason that works is because the drummer and the bass player aren't slowing down to the horns, because if they did, the horns would slow down, and what happens? The whole tempo goes to hell.
yeah, yeah,
So it's like you have these specific things that each instrument is supposed to do, and they just kind of have to live there. But
sure,
every genre of music, I feel like, has its own rules for that,
sure.
and that's just something you have to learn.
So you mentioned Nashville, which is where you live now, and you haven't always lived in Nashville, and you haven't always played like country or Americana music. And I think people think of LA and New York in terms of like their musical creative cities, but I think a lot of people forget about Nashville and how productive that is as a city for musicians. Like that is where so many gigs are.
Hmm.
Like what's your take on that city, moving there, and maybe I don't know, maybe if you were always kind of involved or interested in working in that world, what it's like to kind of be involved in the country world or be involved in the country pop or Americana world.
I think the reason I ended up here is being from Wisconsin. I mean, I grew up in a tiny town.
Hmm.
I immediately moved to Los Angeles after I graduated college and really quickly learned that that community is so tight knit that it was really hard for me to even
Hmm.
meet anybody in that music, career. I feel like especially that pop scene is so just closed off that I was there almost 2 years and I hadn't played a single gig, like
Hmm.
zero. And but I loved living there, so it was kind of a trade-off. But then going to New York, because I grew up doing musicals and singing and doing that sort of stuff, that came super naturally for me. And because it came naturally, people noticed, based on my playing, and I immediately started working. Nashville was kind of a mix between the two, where I was getting to play stuff that wasn't Broadway shows finally,
Hmm. Yeah.
but I was able to delve into all these different genres because everybody thinks country when they think Nashville.
Yeah. Right.
I play pretty much everything but country in
So
Nashville.
funny.
I
That's so
I don't
funny.
think I don't think I've had more than two actual country gigs since I lived here,
Yeah.
which is kind of ironic.
Yeah, that is so interesting because that is the perception. Nashville country, they think Elvis, they think the history of, and even maybe Memphis to a certain degree, like the older soul records, stack records, and things like this. But there's such a wealth of music being created in Nashville that it's definitely it's beyond the genre of country, right? But you do
Hmm.
play with some country bands. But before we get to that, can we talk about your instruments? And this is more of a
Oh yeah.
specific thing because it kind of segues to like your other part of your career, right? You have one part which is a musician and musical director, singer, performer, that kind of thing. And then you have this one that's kind of like a DIY business owner, creator, that kind of thing, right? And I don't know if somebody caught it. I don't see anything in the chat here, but and of course, as a reminder to everyone out there, you can participate. You can use the Q&A function. You can ask questions if you
Only if you
would
have
like
coffee.
to. If you look very closely at Danny's drum set, he's playing two different kinds of drum sets, or specifically one instrument in the first video versus the other. Do you want to talk about what that is and how it
Yeah.
came to be?
Well, yeah, I'll kind of give you the history of it. So there's a really famous bluegrass player that was in Alison Krauss's band named Dan Tyminski.
Hmm.
He was, I think he was in her band like 14 or 16 years. He's got 14 Grammys. I mean, and oh, you would know him from the Vici song "Hey Brother," if anybody's heard that. Hey brother, it's an, or if you've seen "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," he's the guy that sang "Man of Constant Sorrow."
Ah,
So I get called randomly to audition for this person that I don't know who it is, no idea, didn't recognize the name. So learn the music, I went in, played it. But I did one thing interesting was I knew they were going to have a house kit, but there was so much like weird chain noises and all these kind of programmed drum sounds that I was like, well, if I go in and just play a drum set, it's not going to sound like what he's expecting it to sound like. So what can I do? So a good buddy of mine, Mike, that I toured with on another gig, had kind of rigged up this weird piece of wood with chain and stuff, and was using this on the road on his gig. And I was like, wow, that's super cool. Do you care if I kind of mess with it? Because another thing people don't know, I actually do woodworking and I build things too. So I full-time build cabinets right now because COVID. So, but he said yes. So I just started coming up with different versions of this contraption, and we ended up landing on calling it the Junk Hat. It's a hand-hammered metal bottom with a wooden top, and I literally wove chains through it. And the purpose of it is kind of twofold. If you hit it while it's closed, it perfectly duplicates that 808 snare drum that you hear in just about every hip hop recording in history. Or if you put it on a hi-hat stand, which is the foot-controlled contraption, you can open it and drop it, and the chains will drop into the metal and create that super eerie, like Southern rock Americana type sound. Yeah. And so I built one of these and I took it in and used that on the audition, and I sounded like what he was expecting. And out of 14 drummers that auditioned over 2 days, I ended up getting the gig. And I feel like that was a big part of it, was doing something that I knew he wanted to hear that nobody else was going to offer.
Yeah.
The rest of my drumming sucked, but that was spot on.
He brought the right gig. He brought the right gear to the gig. So I mean, but isn't that it though? It goes back to the previous conversation. Like the musicians that can show up with the right dress on at the right time, return calls, those kinds of things, can take care of those things, ultimately get a lot of those gigs. But
I had a feeling you were going to bring this up, so I did. I actually have it sitting here.
You have one there.
Yes. So this is the crazy contraptions. You've got all your chains wrapped around there, hand-hammered metal bottom, and then check this out. So, or if you hit it with a stick, I don't know what it sounds like coming through there. It's probably all distorted. But in that Bryan video, I did not even use a snare drum. This was my snare drum because it's all programmed electronic sounds. And I was like, well, they could use tracks, or I could figure out ways to incorporate all of these track sounds live on a drum set, therefore not being replaceable. Yeah. So that video, I actually used a combination of pad to do some of the snap noises and stuff that still don't exist, but most of it was actually a live drum set that I was able to make sound just like a pop recording.
Wow. And so out of this, you both created a company, the BaldMan Percussion
group. We both have the same hairstyle, so we thought, why not make something funny and kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. Well, I've just sent the link to everybody in the chat here if you want to check out the website to BaldMan Percussion. And you said you just had something else released. Like you've had a number of musicians come across the Junk Hat, use them on recordings, use them on tours, and really like it, and maybe ask or request something else. So what's the other thing that you?
So the newest thing we came up with is called the Stankfoot, and it's kind of based on the idea of the Junk Hat, but we figured since stuff is going to be virtual, or with COVID, everything's going to be kind of reduced, we still wanted to be able to make that chain noise. So this you can actually just set on the floor and attach this to your foot. So you can drop the chains on there. Yeah. It's also magnetic, so you can attach it on here, set it in your snare or whatever. Hit it, does that same kind of electronic sound. For any of our Latin percussionists or anything like that, we wanted something that you could actually use on a gig set next to you. With Guiro, we've got plastic and metal, and then the chain part, because of the magnet, can also set on a snare drum. And Aaron Sterling, who recorded pretty much everything for Sarah Bareilles and John Mayer. I mean, you name it, this guy's on everything. He loves chains on his drums. Now you can actually attach it directly to the rim, and that works. Yeah, so we decided to make it like a 4 or 5 part instrument so that it doesn't matter who you are, you've got some use for this thing.
That's so cool. Well, it just seems like, you know, you took that DIY part of your brain and put it to use in filling a hole in the market where it's like people need this thing, they're asking for it, and something doesn't exist out there. Let me do it. Let me make it myself, you know. Just
well, I was just going to say, I will say with the Junk Hat, when we created it, we were never planning to mass produce them. The second day I had it, like the official version, I built one for my business partner, Mike, and I built one for myself. We flew out to New York and we recorded Colbert with Dan Tyminski. And I played it on there, and Joe Saylor, the house drummer in the Colbert band with John Batiste, came running up to me and like grabbed my shoulder, and I was like, help, help. Like, I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was because I was also bald and he wanted to strangle me. It didn't.
Yeah.
But he was freaking out about the Junk Hat, and he's like, where do I get one of these? And I was like, I don't know, like, because we hadn't talked about it. And then we decided after that to make 10 of them. And out of those 10, this is probably not going to mean anybody to anybody, but go look these people up. Matt Chamberlain, Victor Indrizzo, and Aaron Sterling were 3 of the first 10 people to buy one. Like, we thought high schoolers were going to buy this. Like, and those are 3 of the drummers that I have idolized since I was like 10, no joke.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we're on to something.
I can't believe it. Well, so we've been kind of talking around Tyminski, and that name's been brought up a few times. And we do have a performance of you performing on the Colbert Show with Tyminski. And this is a performance of Southern Gothic. I don't remember.
This is the first ever live performance of the Junk Hat.
Oh, it is. Okay, cool. Great. So this is a perfect example. We can go back to maybe some of your work in the kind of the country Americana. I mean, is that the genre you would categorize Tyminski as?
They kind of made his own category for this album. They literally coined it Southern Gothic, and it's a combination of almost EDM bluegrass.
I like it.
Is the best way to describe it. I've played some weird gigs.
All right, here we go. This is Danny playing with Tyminski on Colbert and Southern Gothic.
And now making his solo television debut with the title track from his album Southern Gothic, please welcome Tyminski.
Blackbird on the old church steeple, Spanish moss hanging in the setting sun. Every house has got a Bible and a loaded gun. We got preachers and politicians. Round here it's kinda hard to tell which one is gonna do more talking with a crooked tongue. This town's got the good Lord shaking his head, looking down thinking we ain't heard a word he said, a word he said. Baptized in Southern Gothic, in the garden of good and evil. Devil right here, who would have thought it? In a town full of God-fearing people, dogs and deadbolts start the night. Nothing left to do but kneel and pray. We got a church on every corner, so why does heaven feel so far away? Far away. There must be something in the muddy water, turns a whiskey about as sweet as sin. Every drunk in town can sing a brown back hymn. Good fences make good neighbors. Good neighbors make good lovers too. And when your man ain't home, any man will do. High on homegrown, smoking that brimstone. Mama ain't stopping, popping that cod. No happy ever after, waiting on the rapture now. Baptized in Southern Gothic, in the garden of good and evil. The devil right here, who would have thought it? In a town full of God-fearing people, dogs and red bulls guard the night. Nothing left to do but kneel and pray. We got a church on every corner, so why does heaven feel so far away? Far away. Southern Gothic, Southern Gothic, Southern Gothic.
Thank you. Tyminski, everybody. We'll be right back. Thanks again.
Wow, fun.
Yeah, crazy.
Did you get a chance to meet Stephen Colbert?
Just really briefly, like no joke, the second we finished, they didn't even let me grab any of my own stuff. They shoved us on a bus.
Yeah.
We got straight out to the airport, ended up on a flight, and it debuted live while we were in the air. Didn't even get to watch it.
Oh no.
You know, because the music industry is very glamorous, everybody.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask, okay, that's a really interesting insight, right? Because we kind of see these musicians and we're part of this experience with them, whether it's on live television or during a live performance or something like this. And it kind of feels like we're there with them in some ways, but you're in some aspects removed from the experience because it's your job, right? And there are a lot of practical considerations that are going on behind the scenes that the audience just doesn't see. Like you were saying, you have to be mindful of time because there are some union issues. If you go over time or if you restart a song or something, you have to pay fines or things like that. And
yeah, they told us that right as we were walking on stage. They were like, by the way, try not to screw up. Colbert's filmed at like 3 p.m, and then they air it later that night. But they literally told us, if you screw up, it's fine. We'll start over, but just realize that that's going to cost Dan and the union and the record label anywhere from 10 to 25 grand.
Wow.
No pressure.
So I mean, like all of a sudden, like your training, like your instincts kick in, right? Everything that you learned about, performing, keeping a smile on and keeping moving, even if you make a mistake or,
No, I looked pretty angry in that video.
I mean, that was a serious song.
The worst stank face in history. I think that's why I get the gig. It's not.
That's
my
part of the
drumming.
pocket. That's part of the pocket that you create the feel. Well, that song is a really that's a heavy song. Listening to that, for maybe the third or fourth time now, just in preparing for this interview, the lyrics are kind of sitting with me a little bit more concretely.
It's dark. Yeah,
there's some darkness in that,
and the whole album's kind of that way.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. He wrote that with a couple other people with the intent to basically license it or give it to someone else for them to record. And the longer he sat with the song, he was like, I really love this and I don't want anybody else to have it. And because of that, Universal was then like, well, what if we do an entire album and call it Southern Gothic? And that was what sparked the whole thing, was him writing that song in an afternoon, and it turned into the entire album. And then fast forward 2 months later, we were on the road for 4 months with Brad Paisley as his opener.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah.
It sounds like there's a bit of introspection going on, with him, or just within the American conversation, kind of the identity of the American South, you know,
Yes,
which has been
and it's
really
a major, it's a major talking point on that, and how people look at churches, but it's so misconstrued, or how people say how religious they are, but then they turn around and do this, and like it's
Sure.
it's some heavy stuff. It's some good listening though, and it make you think.
Yes, yeah, everybody go check that out. Southern Gothic. Yeah, it's good to hear that kind of stuff where it's like, you know, again, I'm going to use country just because it's hard to use any other term, but you know, country music about country music, it's kind of self-reflective, you know. It's you know, kind of having a conversation about what its role is in society and that kind of thing. And I think sometimes Nashville and country music, you know, because of that stereotype and the kind of the generalizations about the location and genre, maybe get a bad rap sometimes, you know, especially with
Oh
people
no,
who
there's
go,
some pretty bad stuff out there.
oh, but coming from like my perspective, having been a jazz studies major, and those of us who are maybe classical performance majors and things like this, you know, and a lot of times these responses we get from students will say, "Oh, I like everything except for country and opera," and it's like, "Whoa, wait, why, why country and opera? What's there?" And it tends to be that there's a lot of baggage that goes along with those genres. Well, opera, you can't understand it, but then country, there's that, you know, kind of strong stereotype, geographical, you know, associations or whatever that just doesn't resonate with some people. But
Sure, yeah.
it seems like maybe there's some border crossing there, and
That's the thing is, I mean, Dan would still be considered country, which is funny because he is one of the most renowned bluegrassers in history, and his half of those guys in that video, you wouldn't know it, but they're on just about every bluegrass recording out.
Oh, yeah.
Like Justin Moses, like look him up. It's so unbelievable. He's the guy that was playing dobro.
Okay.
But then you turn around and then you've got me, the bass player, Adam. Like we're rockers at heart. Like that's what we do. We're rock bands. You've got this weird convergence of these rock dudes with these bluegrass guys, and we're creating this unique sound that's still country.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's hard to define, you know, just like the word popular music, you know, you know, being involved in it, I'm sure it's probably not even something that you think about so much. It's just the music that you play. It's Bailey Bryan's music. It's Dan Tyminski's music. It's not country. It's not pop. It's not, you know, a genre. It's just a song that, you know, you're trying to play the best you can.
Well, we were kind of talking about career choices and how I ended up where I am. And I will say that I think growing up as a singer and a piano player, I really learned about melodies and like what I love from a musical aspect. And everything I do drumming wise is approached with that in mind. If you were to ask me who my favorite drummers are, I personally think that's the worst question in the world, because I'm not a drummer fan. And I know that sounds so crazy, but like, it's fine. And I gain influences from a lot of people, but I personally love melodies. I love lyrics, and I will choose to listen to a singer-songwriter playing acoustic guitar and singing before I will choose to listen to any drummer.
Sure. Yeah, you've got other priorities, right? There's other things about the music that you serve, right? You serve the music beyond yourself.
Yeah, but every gig that you can see, especially from these videos, and it's funny seeing these all in one place, because I haven't thought about this much, but seeing in one place, I very specifically will only take gigs that I respect the artist and I respect their music so much that I feel like I can bring that same level of passion through the drum set to it. I don't ever want the drum set to come before that, because that is not what it's about.
Great point. That's a great point. You know, yeah, we get focused, and especially as instrumentalists, I think we kind of hide behind our instruments. You know, we use it a bit as a buffer between, you know, us and the audience, or us and the real thing that we're trying to do, which is make music and make something meaningful. So I think you've always had that connection, you know, to the music in a bigger picture with what you want to do. It kind of resonates throughout your career when you look at everything you do, right? Being a business owner, you're also a television host, right? You do this thing on A&E. What's going on there?
So, well, that kind of came up. So I was subbing with an artist, Ruthie Collins, And while I was on the road with her, I randomly mentioned, oh, we're going through some great antiquing areas. And she kind of looked at me with these eyes and she's like, you like antiquing? I was like, yes. And so like we ended up just going antique shopping and filling up our trailer, our gear trailer, with all these antiques and stuff that we brought back to Nashville. And then she hired me to like remodel her entire home and shiplap every wall. And like we started posting these videos online, and all of a sudden we get a call from this William Morris rep out in Los Angeles. And they're like, we stumbled across your videos and we'd love to fly you out for some like chats about possible TV shows with 6 networks. And we were like, what? So we flew out to LA, pitched our show that we came up with on the flight on the way over, and got 3 different offers. And we ended up taking the A&E offer. And it's just DIY projects that you can do with stuff that you already, have at your house that you would think were trash and you're going to throw away. So it's called Homemade. And they basically let us come up with all our own projects. And that's another ironic thing, is me taking another one of my passions, which was building, and kind of it combined with my music world. And all of a sudden I'm working with an artist that I played with on a television show doing DIY. Like, yeah. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. And I think, building and making and being creative in the real sense, like the true sense of the word. I think a lot of people think of the word creativity and they think, okay, musicians are creative, visual artists are creative, there's so many different fields in which you can be creative, but creativity isn't just like a mindset, right? Mm-hmm. Creativity isn't, just somebody dyeing their hair and doing something different, right? Being creative is making something. It's creating mm-hmm. something and making it real in the world, and taking an abstract idea and then making it tangible. And one of the things this series is really geared towards, and like kind of our efforts as a department, is to get our students to think about making music, not just playing music, but to make it, to create their own records, to create their own YouTube pages, their own websites like you, to create their own instruments. Maybe mm-hmm. this is inspiring somebody out there to say, I haven't really found a good mouthpiece. I haven't found a good set of drumsticks. Maybe I can make something myself and improve upon the concept.
Yeah. Well, and the best way to do that is think about, where are some points that I'm always frustrated with my instrument? Like every time I go to do this happens. Or every time I wish I had this, I don't have it and I have to figure something else out. And that was, that's how all of the inventions and crazy things I've done or I've come up with have stemmed from, is no one has made a way to play electronic music live on the drum set unless it's a pad. And I don't necessarily want to play a pad. Right. So how do I do that?
Huh, how cool. Well, pretty soon we'll be seeing you in your homemade clothes. You'll have that all taken care of. You'll have homemade hair,
I grew up in a household where my mom made all of our clothes, and you will never see me wearing homemade clothes again.
Mom. Okay. All right.
I had like MC Hammer pants that she sewed out of this like fluorescent watch material. Yeah. And I wore that all the way through 8th grade.
I love it. I do remember that about, going to your house and seeing, your father had like a sourdough starter there, and you had homemade soap. And if I remember, he was a scout leader or something. So like there was always this, was that right?
He did all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So like there was this real sense in your home of like, if you want something, make it, you don't need to go to the store. You don't need to go buy it. We've got all the materials here for whatever you need. And I also remember you telling stories about kind of making your own plays and
down in the basement,
songs and things like this. Now, do you still compose? That was kind of a fun way to pass time, I suppose, but do you compose your own music as well?
I do. So I actually have my own like passion project band so we decided, it's a band called Eastland. And essentially the idea was, how can we take some of the most talented hired guns we've ever worked with in different band configurations? And for those who don't know, hired guns are basically not the artist. It's anybody else that is hired and paid to play for X artist, but is not technically part of the band. You're a hired gun. So at any time you could be replaced. Like there's no contracts, there's none of that. So we basically put together this mega group that was kind of based on the idea of the Eagles. And we were like, what if we found a group of 5 guys? Everybody is a monster player. Everybody writes everybody sings, and then just put us all in a room and see what happens.
Yeah.
And we ended up with this just incredible album, you know, and I think I co-wrote 5 out of the 7 or 8 songs that were there. It was mostly myself and Wes and another guy, Jesse, that wrote most of everything. But at that time, I was also touring on another Broadway show. And so we were co-writing over Skype, like while I was in hotel rooms and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I still get to do a little bit of writing, not as much. I composed a lot of jazz stuff when I was in college, but I haven't really delved on much of that.
Sure.
But I do a ton of studio work, and essentially that is a form of composing, because I mean, you walk into a room, they play you a demo or give you a chart and say, okay, let's lay one down.
There's no part for it.
Yeah, no, never.
You have to make it up. Yeah. Well, you know, that's definitely something that our students maybe are lacking in their training just historically. I think, you know, the idea of improvisation as like a spontaneous act of composing isn't really something that we emphasize so much. And when you ask a musician to make something up, you know, it can be a very traumatic experience for some people because they've never been asked to do it. You know, what do you mean play whatever I want? Like, well, you know, play what sounds good and what makes sense for the context. But, you know, it doesn't have to be jazz either, right? A lot of people get the wrong impression about composition and improvisation, especially that it's genre specific. But it sounds like you're forced to make things up all the time.
I think a really important lesson for me was transitioning from New York to Nashville. And what that meant was going from playing the same show every night with my music in front of me and just staring at that page to, you can't have music on stage. Like, what are you doing with that book? You know, it's like, you're not allowed. So you have to listen to the music. You have to have your head in. And it was, I think that transition was the most interesting to me, to realizing how much different you can play as a musician, not staring at a page.
Right.
And how much freedom that gives you.
Yeah. You know, I would love to play an Eastland track. We don't have any loaded up here at the moment, but we do have something from Parker McKee.
Okay, yeah.
Rolling Stone. Are you into that? Should we?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Okay, so this is for everyone following along at home. We've got a little playlist posted in there. This is the last track. This is Danny playing with an artist named Parker McKee, and the song's called Rolling Stone. And this is kind of our last opportunity for any questions. So again, you can please use the Q&A, or you can put them in the chat, and we'd be happy to take some final questions as we play out the session. So here is Danny with Parker McKee.
Said I wanna be on the cover of Rolling Stone. Grab this guitar and get out on the road. You can try to save my troubled soul, but the 2 and 4 go down to the bone, and my heart was made to beat for rock and roll. He was a suit and tie, 10,000 watt smile, sure found nothing wrong. No better man to take and my bass down low. And I wanna be on the cover of Rolling Stone. Grab this guitar and get out on the road. I wanna be on the cover of Rolling Stone. Grab this guitar and get out on the road. You can try to save my troubled soul, but the 2 and 4 go down to the bone, and my heart was made to beat. Oh, my heart was made to beat. Yeah, my heart was made to beat for rock and roll. Ooh, rock and roll.
Yeah. Love it.
Actually, really funny. So the guitarist in that was the guitarist also from the Bailey gig in the
Oh,
first
okay.
video we showed. And he and I met each other in New York because he was the utility player on Spring Awakening.
Aha. It's not
And-
what you know, it's who you know, right?
And now he plays with Carly Pierce, who is one of the like biggest country stars out there. So
Yeah. Man. I mean, it's just so impressive. I mean, your career has so many different facets, and you're really doing so many really large things, like so many big things, you know. What do you have coming up next?
We just filmed a couple things with Brandy Clark, who is, again, she Americana, but she's country. She's actually written a lot of the Miranda Lambert songs that you hear, like that have been big hits and stuff. She's written a lot for a lot of other people, but we've got a live stream coming up with her Saturday, March 6th. That you can go watch. I think we did 16 songs on that. And then
Wow.
this upcoming Wednesday, March 3rd, we're playing on Ellen with her as well.
Awesome.
So those are kind of the two things coming up. And then I know we're filming a full set with Austin City Limits with Brandy as well.
Oh, wow.
And then it sounds like we've got some stuff coming up, hopefully in the next few months with Ricky Skaggs as well. So
You're my hero, man. That's
I
awesome.
don't know about that.
I
But
mean, come on. How cool is that? Austin City Limits, Ellen, Colbert. I mean, these are amazing things. I mean, do you get a thrill out of these events? Like when you look back at it, you're like, God, that was pretty amazing. That was pretty fun.
looking back, yes. And I will say the pandemic's been great for that, because
Yeah.
I'm always so busy, and I keep myself so busy that this has been a nice slowdown to kind of realize that I have done some cool things. Because
Yeah.
I am trust me, I am my own worst critic. I am
Yeah.
so hard on myself. Like, it looks like I've had a crazy awesome career and I'm the happiest person in the world, but like it's hard. A music career is really hard.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, this pandemic and slowing down and taking a break from it has really been an eye opener that, wow, this is cool. And getting to do this for a living has been like unbelievably amazing.
Any final words, any words of wisdom you want to pass on to our students?
Just put yourself out there. Like, I mean, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've always done. That's how I am where I am today.
Yeah.
Is I've just never taken no for an answer, and I've just never been afraid to ask, because
awesome.
asking is going to get you further than you're playing most times.
That's true. Put it out there in the world. Well, Danny Young, man, thank you so much for joining us this week. Really
Thank you
happy
for
to-
having me. This has been so fun. It's been great to.
Of course,
catch
we
up.
should do this more often. We're going to hit you up next year, maybe, to be a guest artist on our session. If you're ever out on the West Coast, we'll connect, maybe have you out for a live performance when we get back.
Yeah.
For everybody here on campus, next week we have another CRC Music in the Studio session with a voice actress, Jessica Calvello, talking about how to have a career in voice acting, whether it's voiceovers or in anime or movies, commercials and things like this. So something a little bit different, but super fun and really interesting. We hope you join us next week.
Oh, I will tune in for that. That sounds awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to see you there. These are open to everybody and completely free, of course. So thank you again, Danny. We will talk to you very soon. And thank you, everybody out there watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.